Representative David Cicilline of Rhode Island for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You explained that you inherited an agreement with a deadline but no plan, a backlog of 17,000 special immigrant visas, and a responsibility to evacuate safely both Americans and those who helped us in this effort. As a candidate, President Biden promised to end the war in Afghanistan, and he kept his word. I agree with him. It was the right thing to do. And while today's hearing is focused on the U.S. withdrawal, I think it would be a mistake to lose sight of the misjudgments and lessons learned over the long arc of the past 20 years, and I hope Congress will have an opportunity to do its own self-reflection. But I want to begin, Mr. Secretary, my question about the evacuation. You were cut off when you were trying to explain the vetting process, and I wonder if you could quickly finish that answer about what the State Department did with respect to vetting people that were being evacuated out of Afghanistan.
Sure. And two things, and by the way, I very much agree with you, and I heard the chairman say at the outset that this committee, among other things, will be focusing on the 20-year history of our engagement in Afghanistan, and I think there are lots of lessons to be learned across the board through every administration, including our own. With regard to the vetting, two things I would point out here. First, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Special Immigrant Visa Program and our commitment, and the commitment I know of so many members of this committee, to the Afghans who worked with us, who stood side by side with us, and the work that we did these first months of the administration to take a program that was in pretty much a dead stall and to put it into
Mr. Secretary, I don't want to be impolite, but if you could just quickly say what you did, because I know how thorough it was. Yeah. I have two more things I want to get to.
Thank you. Simply put, when it comes to vetting people coming out of Afghanistan, they go to transit countries. We negotiated agreements with more than a dozen countries to transit Afghans at those countries, and we do security screenings there. We've sent Customs and Border Patrol agents to all of those countries. We have the law enforcement, intelligence, and security agencies all there doing vetting, biometrics, biographic information. Then they come to the United States, but before they're resettled anywhere, they're also at one of our military bases, and any vetting continues there. And under authorities that we've asked Congress for, including the ability for people who are resettled in a year's time to apply for a green card, the vetting and background authorities will continue so that if anything comes up, we can continue to do that.
Great. Thank you. As you know, Mr. Secretary, the LGBTQI community in Afghanistan is extremely vulnerable to punitive actions from the Taliban. It's important, in my view, that we take steps to ensure that those who would be subjected to violence or worse because of their sexual orientation or gender identity are safe. The Council for Global Equality, the Human Rights Campaign, and LGBTQI+ refugee support groups released a 10-point plan to protect Afghan LGBTQI refugees. My question is, have you seen this plan? And if so, is the administration prepared to implement it? And is it consistent with the presidential memorandum of early 2021 that speaks of the responsibility to help Afghan refugees that make it to neighboring states as outlined in that memorandum?
Well, thank you for very rightly putting the spotlight on concerns about the LGBTQI+ community in Afghanistan and the particular threat that they may find themselves under. This is something that we are focused on. I have not personally seen the report that you referred to. I'm going to ask to see it. I'm pretty sure that my team has, but I'll take a look at that myself, and I thank you for sending it to us.
Great, and I look forward to following up with you on that. And finally, Mr. Secretary, the Brown University Cost of War Project has compiled a sobering list of figures as it relates to post-9/11 conflicts, including Afghanistan. Trillions of dollars spent, over 900,000 lives lost in Afghanistan, 2,641 Americans, and 38 million people displaced around the world. And, Mr. Secretary, the war in Afghanistan went on, as you know, for 20 years, leading to extraordinary costs in terms of dollars spent, lives lost, and political capital expended. Taking stock of these costs, my question is, what do you think are the most important lessons after 20 years in Afghanistan and 20 years of post-9/11 conflict that we should learn?
I think all of us have to come together to do just that, to try to look at the lessons and then reflect those lessons in what we do together going forward. To my mind, at least, one of the lessons is while we are very effective at dealing with terrorist threats to our country and eliminating them, which we did very successfully in Afghanistan, the idea of using military force to try to remake a society is something that is beyond our means and beyond our capacity. and we need to think really hard about whether we want to engage in these enterprises going forward. You're right to point to the cost. Let me just say very quickly, I think that Brown study concluded that on the basis of about $2 trillion being spent on Afghanistan over the last 20 years, when you include indirect costs, that averages out to $300 million a day for 20 years. And I know people will say, well, that wasn't the case the last year or so, but had we not ended the war and brought our people home, we would have had to have re-upped it to deal with the renewed attacks by the Taliban, to deal with the onslaught nationwide. And those costs would have gone right back up again. And we have to ask ourselves very hard questions about whether that is the right way to spend our money.
Thank you. Gentleman's
Thank you,
time
Mr.
has expired. I now recognize Representative Lee Zeldin of New York for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, one of my